Heat waves are a fact of life in many parts of the world, but while we're used to a few hot days in a row, a new study says that the future could bring extreme heat waves that are far more intense and far more frequent than anything we have experienced in the past. And what's worse, they say those extreme heat waves will happen much sooner than expected. Heat waves are ranked according to how many consecutive days of high temperatures they bring. A typical heat wave might be 4 or 5 days of temperatures above average for a particular place. But researchers have found that these more intense and more frequent extreme heat waves will likely start with at least 7 straight days of high temperatures and could last for weeks. And yes, by extreme they mean both longer lasting and more intense than anything we've seen before. And if that sounds like a little bit of an exaggeration, consider this. The researchers say that heat waves that currently happen once every 50 years or so will be happening at least once every 5 years by the end of the century. Heat waves that are currently once in a millennium events will become once in a decade events by the end of the century. And the worst case scenario is that these kinds of heat waves could happen every year. Now, it is important to note that the frequency of these extreme heat waves depends a lot on what emissions scenario we follow. This study assumed that emissions would continue like today, or even slightly less, which is the IPCC's intermediate and high emission scenarios. If we do something about climate change, then these numbers will be lower. But even in the best case scenario where we slash emissions now, we are still looking at a 4 to 5 times increase in the frequency of these extreme heat waves. So why should you care about some abstract numbers? Well, first of all, heat waves are already responsible for far more deaths than any other weather event. Second, there's a lot of infrastructure out there that isn't ready for extreme heat. For example, a recent heat wave in the UK caused havoc on the railway system because the old tracks weren't designed to expand in such high temperatures. Third, heat waves can cause crop failures and water shortages. And fourth, there are lots of knock-on effects. For example, more frequent and intense heat waves will likely lead to more wildfires. It's not just scientists sounding the alarm either. The insurance industry has already started to take notice of these risks. They're seeing the increased frequency of extreme weather events firsthand through their claims, so they're starting to pull back from some areas that are most at risk. What's worse, it turns out that heat is one of the most dangerous parts of climate change. While a few extra degrees might sound like a nice warm jacket on a chilly day, it's actually far more dangerous than you think. Higher temperatures mean more water evaporates from the soil and plants, which reduces the amount of water available to us. It also means that snow and ice melt faster, which raises sea levels and threatens coastal communities. Not to mention that hotter temperatures make it harder for our bodies to cool down, which can lead to heat stroke and other health problems. The good news is that unlike a lot of other climate risks, we can do something about this one. We know that the only way to prevent these extremely hot days is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And if we don't, at least we'll have some warning that things are getting really hot. Of course, it's possible that this story made you feel a bit hopeless. The future can seem so bleak sometimes, but we have solutions to fix this problem. You can find out more about them through additional resources to their students, or the way that they made learning fun and engaging. Share your thoughts with us. We'd love to hear your stories.